So this activity is designed to build off of the work you've been doing. You've had some research activities for this class to help you gather some sources. You have had some library activities to help you gather some sources. You're going to be picking one for this activity, one source that you know is going to be in your annotated bibliography to do an activity to kind of practice with that source with critical reading and evaluation, and do some brainstorming and drafting for one annotation in your annotated bibliography. First things first, get your source, pick it, go to your annotated bibliography, make sure you know how to give it edit access so that I can see the history in it and things like that as you continue to draft and add things to it. Again, ask for help if you don't know how to do this. And then we're going to be working with, again, like the one source that's going to be your annotated bibliography. The first thing I'm going to have you do is you can pause this, take maybe 8 to 10 minutes. I don't think it should take more than that. To first, like step one, read over the text and make crappy notes. See what I did there? About your source using the CRAP test. Kind of note here, I have a link here to help you get back to the test that we went over. So it's going to open up here, and again, it's currency, relevance, authority, accuracy. This is to practice working with your source to create like that habit of mind. Like I said, with the keywords and the questions, you might not draft out all of that stuff every time you research, but kind of once you do it once, it helps sort of create this skill where you know like what to think about, what kinds of questions to ask yourself. Same thing with this. We're going to do the CRAP test for one source in terms of like making notes about it. You can and are encouraged to kind of make notes if you want to for the other ones, but I'm not going to check it. Again, just to go through it once, practice asking yourself those questions and answering them about a source just to kind of help create that like habit of mind. And you won't be filling this out again like for every single source. And step two, once you've kind of made these notes for each thing, just to kind of go back, underline like relevant points that you think are going to be worth noting about like the author or the text. If there's anything there that it's, as you get done, like it's important to note about like the source's purpose that might help you with the summary, the author, the credibility, things like that. Your notes here, we're going to use them, so I have you come back to it a little bit and you can use it to help write parts of your annotation. You don't have to answer every single question for each letter. Like I'll show you, like this is a lot. Like you don't have to answer all of this for everything, but it will help you kind of look at that source and pick out what's important about currency for this source. Is it older, so you have to address like that it's background and why you're going to use it? Is it recent? Might help you decide like if you're not going to use this source at all because it doesn't pass the CRAP test for a particular reason. Oh, sorry. I mean, say I don't pass the CRAP test, like it's like just a really bad source. If it has bias and things like that, that's okay to include it. But if you like can't find an author, it's not even relevant, it's outdated, things like that, then that would tell you not to use it. If it is current, it is relevant, like it does represent something important, but it has a little bias, that's still okay to include. It still represents the conversation. But again, like there's some gray area there. You just want to make sure that this is something that actually is important to the conversation, and be able to kind of explain and note things like that in your annotation about that source, your notes. Okay, so practice with your text, part 2. Once you're done with the CRAP test, the detailed thing, you're going to make some summary notes just for the one source. So we're going to start here with just the main point. Record like what genre or type of text this is, like book chapter, documentary, news article, academic blog, peer-reviewed article, what is it? And then kind of look back at what you wrote for purpose in that section of your crappy notes, and write down like what you see as the text like main point. Some tips for helping you figure out main point are, first, like I'm going to start at the bottom here. Think about if this text seems more about reporting or persuading, because I can kind of tell you a little bit about what its purpose is. Sometimes you can look at the intro and the conclusion for ideas for like what the main point is. And then again, like go back and maybe look at notes you made for the CRAP test, and you should be able to find something that lets you know what the main point is. A couple of examples here. If the goal of this text, the end game, the purpose, the thesis, is to explore the results of a study and inform a reader, then you want to note, like for the main point, like what is the main point or result from that study. So this, and one of our examples did this, like this was a 2009 longitudinal study that examined this. If it sounds like the author wants to persuade the reader, like there's clearly like something that they want you to think or believe or do at the end of this documentary or article, what are they persuading you to do? Like, is it to like see, like understand that this is a big deal and an issue that's happening, believe that this solution might work, like take a certain stance on the issue? What is it? That's going to be the main goal. If the goal is to report on an event, so like maybe it's like news, like reporting something about like the happened recently in the news, what is the main gist of the event? Like newspaper style, like who, what, when, where, why, like the main, gist of what happened. And these are just some examples of like, I guess like what to think about, like how to figure out what that main point is, and maybe some ideas for how you can figure out how to word it. The next step is those summary details, like notes for those summary details. So 3 to 4 main points, information, or steps the author uses to achieve that goal. So to report about the event, like main details of the event, main details about the study, main reasons that they give to change your mind about something. You have to start by considering, again, that main point of the article. Some things to consider are, what are the main points the author makes, like to like achieve that goal, like to defend or explain a main, like their main thesis. A tip is to kind of look through the text sometimes and maybe pay attention to sections and subheadings. That can sometimes tell you what their major reasons are if it's something that's persuasive. What important like info do they offer? What important text do they discuss? Like if they reference an important, if they are referencing an important study to support themselves, or offer good information. Describe the steps the author moves through to report information. A lot of times, especially if it's a book, they might say like first the author discusses this, next the author says this, finally they do this. A couple of examples again, if the goal here is to explore results of a study and inform the reader, what are the main points of the study? Like who and where, it was conducted, characteristics of the group, the results, things like that. Anytime you're talking about a study, we want to know details about like the conditions of it and how it was conducted. If the author wants to and what was found, sorry. If the author wants to persuade the reader to believe, something, how did they do that? What reasons did they give, or what information did they move through? If the goal is to report on an event, what are the important highlights or details that show that this was a significant event, important things that happened? Going into the next part, what does it add to the conversation? Here's that list of questions again. Go through and figure out like 1 or 2 things here that really show why this is important. Sometimes knowing the type of text it is helps you figure this out. Like if it's from a study from a scholar, it's typically this one. If it's like a documentary or a blog, something from like a particularly like maybe emotional, loud, vocal, like very opinionated source, it might be this. If it's older, it could be for background or it could be foundational. If it's an interview, a story, narrative, that kind of thing in the news, like it could be like this primary, kind of a primary like testimony, a first-hand account, probably a primary source. If it explores like a new theory or a solution, it could likely be from like recent, hopefully like recent like news or articles published, things like that. If it explores a certain perspective, a lot of articles will sort of possibly cover like, especially like even like op-ed pieces will cover sometimes like particular perspectives, maybe a new theory. You might find things in magazines. Sometimes new theories and solutions will be in your more academic sources as well. But these are just some things to think about. And again, like this is kind of, I think this is sometimes the harder thing for people to figure out, like why this is included, what's important about it. But it shows a lot of like understanding of the text itself, and it's an important part of like doing that critical reading of the text. Last part 4 is credibility. Using those CRAP test notes. And again, to get the author information like publications, you have to research the source. Like you have to look up the author, find information about them, stuff like that. bouncing around again. What is the author's expertise? Again, this is the questions we went over earlier. What proof exists for their expertise, publications, relevant affiliations, things like that that are important. Does the author have a stake or bias that's notable, something that we maybe need to know, or influences, like what they have to say or how they say it? Maybe if you do notice like a particular level of like opinion or emotion, things like that. Does the publisher have a stake in the issue? So again, like political slant for news is always important. Bias can be relevant in like personal experience, organizations, blogs, things like that. Sometimes you can find those kinds of things in like mission statements for organizations. Again, like it's not necessarily always to show like a bad bias, but just to show like why they care, like what their stake is. And sometimes that's also important. The last thing that you're going to be doing is writing a draft of your annotation for this source. So using your notes and all the stuff that you just did. Trying to cover all the main things that we talked about. 125 words. Usually it's about 7 to 8 sentences, something like that. Having that summary, which is your biggest part, like your main point. Your summary details what it adds to the conversation, and then credibility, like author, publication, background, or stake in the issue. Couple of things to remember. Stay in present tense. Use concise language. Stay focused. Use your own words. Avoid like quotes. Avoid like personal opinion about the issue. Avoid personal pronouns, things like that. I'm going to add this one in here from before. Don't ask questions. It's also kind of part of maintaining that like objective tone that we're going to be kind of practicing and working on with this. And use signal phrases according to the author, that kind of stuff. Okay. So when you're done with this draft on your annotated bibliography, you're going to drop the link to that work on your annotated bibliography into the assignment.